Hey, folks.
Hey.
Welcome to the Oddcast Podcast.
Off the record.
I'm Blackie.
I'm Erica.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your happy Father's Day. Thank you for being here. And
happy Father's Day.
You got you fathers out there. Thanks for sharing your day with us. We appreciate that. This week, we've got our guest from last week back on since we had a few technical issues, Mr. Mark Green.
Woohoo.
Yeah, always excited to talk to him. So let's bring him in and we will kind of start the conversation. Where is Mark?
Hey, everybody. How y'all?
There he is.
Hey, Mark. Welcome back.
How y'all? All right.
Good,
maybe this
you?
time the cameras will do well. Maybe this time.
Well, I actually went through and downloaded some software that maybe I was supposed to do a long time ago when I bought the camera. We will see. It told me it's supposed to fix it. So we will see.
We'll know if somebody else is listening to us if stuff starts happening.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this week I've got a few names I'll leave out to see if, I think if we talk about a certain country that starts with I, maybe that's when the issues start. So I won't talk about those today. So everybody knows Mark Green. I think everybody does. If you don't, you should. He's at Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead. We watch it's a Friday night, 8:00 Central. Highly suggest checking it out.
Yes.
Good gardening tips.
Definitely good homesteading
info. And my man full of wisdom here, Mark. Spitting it out. Spitting the wisdom. Anyway, as you guys know, we lost a little camera work last week and we kind of missed a little bit what Mark was talking about. Thank you, Pops. Appreciate it. Sharing the link. But this week we're going to kind of touch on some different things. I know I've had a lot of questions, and Mark and I have talked a little bit. With Mark being a farmer, we've got quite a few farmers in our group. One of the things I've kind of been reading about Mark is, and I've actually downloaded some papers on it, but I'm going to let you do most of the talking on it, and then I'll ask you some questions. But I've noticed the decline of cattle, the closure of meat packing plants and chicken farms and stuff like that's really starting to come forefront. You don't hear about it as much in the news, but they might say something on a Monday and then you don't hear about it, for the rest of the week. What do you think's going on with the cattle? Why are we down? I know we're down since 2022. We are down 6.2%. And that's losing roughly 5.7 million cattle from 2022 to 2026, whether it be just cattle dying, cattle, of disease, of farmers selling off cattle, of cattle having to be, basically, killed. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but what do you think's going on with this?
Well, all that's true what you said. There's we've had some out west where they have a lot of cattle, had some bad winters, some cows, froze to death, and then they was having a hard time getting feed to them and disease. There's a lot of factors that plays into it, just like all parts of farming. But I think is you have some people who are pushing an agenda to do away with the cattle. The UN and a few other organizations and a few individuals, of course, have made comments that they want to do away with cattle. Some of it they, say that the cattle causes, green, the methane gas.
Methane gas, right.
That destroys the ozone. There's, of course, that argument just flies out the door because we got more trees on this planet than we did 100 years ago. So, but that is, pulling that out. Even corn at the amount of corn that's planted in places that's pulling a lot of that back out. So to me, that's just another way. To me, it's a money making thing and a control thing.
Yeah, I kind of look at it, Mark. Is cattle have been around since the beginning of basically, the beginning of man. We'll say that. Cows have been around.
Yes.
They've been an animal that we've processed. Whatever we've eaten since. So when they start throwing around that green agenda of getting rid of cows for methane, we know how the earth works. We know that when something's depleted, it's created by something else. That's how we keep the circle of life going.
Right. So, and of course, yes, they've been hurt. I mean, you think about how many millions of buffalo were running around in the U.S. Before they were wiped out. And you look at the herds of the animals in Africa. I mean, sometimes, I know y'all have seen it, just thousands and thousands of, different animals going across them plains of Africa. To me, it just don't make no sense because animals have been on the earth thousands of years. I do think it's a money-making scheme. Also, now we're having the lab-grown meat pushed. And like I said, several organizations have said we need to do away with cattle. Of course, this year we've heard a lot about the ticks being in boxes around the fields. And what I've seen, most of these fields were not row crop fields, they were pastures. Of course, we know that a tick can cause a bite besides Lyme disease. It gives you where you're allergic to red meat.
The alpha-gal syndrome, yeah.
Now, red meat just ain't cattle. It's deer, all your type animals like that, goats, sheep that are red meat. So, you start thinking about that and you start kind of putting two and two together is if these ticks may not necessarily been for humans, they may be more for the animals to get them sick, to have problems where you can knock a dent in them.
Right.
With the the packing places closed, and that's the one that's kind of weird. Why a place would want to shut down when they're making money. They have a very strong customer base that buys beef. I know a lot of people are probably slowed up on steaks, but I know a lot of people still probably buying hamburger meat.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can make so much hamburger meat, So, it's hard to pinpoint it down to a T with this because I believe it's going all over to everywhere. But I think it deals with a few individuals and a few organizations that think they know better than us. It's about money. And they want to control. If you go back and look at Americans or our cattle, that was a symbol of our power back right before the Civil War.
Absolutely.
You look at it, one time we were the largest beef exporter, in the world. I think Argentina, Brazil, and a few others were right there with us, Australia. And, we were the biggest beef supporter. When you have a large herd of cattle, you can feed your country.
Sure.
If you think about it.
Sure.
World War II, all our cows were going to feed them boys fighting in World War II in Korea and World War I. And in the Civil War, cattle was a big thing. A lot of people don't, you don't see that part of the Civil War. But the Union Army was going out west, bringing cattle back. And the Confederates was fighting them over it too, and they was trying to buy from each other. And then you had Mexico in the mix too that was trying to supply cattle to both the Union and the Confederates because they seen where they could make money. And there was actually a little war went on out there over the cattle during that time period. And a lot of people don't realize that. But, and of course, America, first thing most people think about America's cowboys, because we fool with cattle, because that's been one of our strongest industries, has been the cattle. I mean, yeah, we had the cotton industry that was strong, and some other industries, you know, later on the iron and the oil and coal, but they were before then. I mean, we had the cattle and the cotton going on way before then. And like a guy said one time, when you go by a man's farm and he's got a herd of 30, 40 cows, that guy's doing pretty good. He might not be filthy rich, but he's got some money sitting out there in that field that he could sell at any time and feed his family and possibly pay his mortgage.
Right.
Well, so it was also a sign of wealth to a certain point when you had cattle. Because all the poor people before the Civil War and after the Civil War were mainly eating chickens and hogs. I'm going to say this, it's going to sound ugly, but your richer people were the ones eating beef during that time period.
Right.
Your poor Southerners, your poor white and black Southerners, now the Northerners were probably doing a little better because they were growing a lot of other crops that the South wasn't. But, you know, you have to go back and start looking at the history, how everything was progressing. And, you know, back in the 1800s and early 1900s, hogs and chickens on your property meant you was doing pretty good too. But when you go by a man's field and he's got cattle, and he's got big, pretty pastures, that man's doing pretty good. Yeah, he may be in debt, but he's got something there on that property that can bring him back some money.
Right.
So I look at it from several standpoints. First of all, they want to get rid of beef.
Yep.
And then somebody just said, I love deer meat, and yes, ma'am, I agree. They're going to try to do with that too.
Yep.
Them ticks just ain't for cows and for us. I tell you, they're for some other stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because they know that most of us will revert back real quick. When the beef disappears, we'll go to the deer. Well, if the deer ain't there, what are you going to? You know, you have to go back to the squirrels and rabbits, and of course they'll get it too because ticks get on them.
Sure.
So you can sit here and play with something and wipe out a whole industry and cause a lot of people a lot of problems and put people under control very quick, you know. So
well, Mark, they just said that I was reading an article the other day about cats are now getting a disease from these ticks. It's not a disease they've known about, but they're getting basically it's a disease where these ticks bite these cats and these cats go crazy. I mean, it mentally messes. Cats are already mentally messed up, but it messes with, you know, their brain, and makes them go crazy. And you have to put the cats down. And you know, I know we don't farm cats, but what I mean is, you know, where if these ticks are creating diseases in something as simple as a cat, who knows what it's doing to deer and, you know, squirrel and everything that we eat. And that's scary. I mean, you know, it almost makes it to a point where people can't even move out in the middle of nowhere and try to live off the land. You know, that's right. And again, population control.
Well, you know, the powers to be has been watching this homestead movement. You know, they're watching it.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people are leaving cities. They're buying pieces of property. Now, some of them are getting burned out real quick. It ain't easy work. I'm going to tell you that now. It's back-breaking, everyday work. Yep. If you really full-fledged go into everything and try to eat off your property and try to make a little money off your property, it's a 7-day week, pretty much from daylight to dark, and then after dark some. And a lot of people going into it. Now, some have got pretty fortunate. They've started YouTube channels back when it was coming in new. So they were able to jump on that bandwagon where they got popular and they started making some money. And so they're doing pretty good, a lot of those. Now, how long they'll hold out, I don't know. But you know that they're watching this homestead movement. They know people are trying to get away from cities. They're trying to get out where they can have more freedom to grow their food, to, you know, raise their kids up in a more natural way. And they don't like that. I tell you right now, they don't like it, because that gets you out of the control box.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it gets you where you're more self-reliant, you know. So I see them soon messing with this somehow. But I think they've got, you know, like I said, years ago, they got the chickens. They got the hogs. What most people don't probably know that right now, most of the hogs in the United States is owned by another country. And
Wow.
they own all the packing houses.
Mm.
A lot of the farmers that's raising these big hog farms, they're doing it for a company. They do it just like chickens now. They take, you know, you have a company, they own the chickens. They make you build the chicken houses and take care of it, and they bring the chickens every so often, and they come get them, and you get a little percentage of it. But they actually still keep control on that. And they've done the hogs the same way. Now, the cattle, see, they hadn't been able to do the cows that way. But it's been harder to do the cows, sheep, and goats, because it's harder to control that.
Why do you think they are pushing the American farmer out as, you know, as owning his whole business and, you know, his own cattle farm, his own processing, or an American processing plant? I know that there's a lot of things that go on in this country. Farmland's another one. You know, farmland's being sold to foreign entities, and these foreign entities are hiring farmers to farm their land for them. You know, like the Bill Gates and China thing.
Yeah.
Other farmers are doing the farming. It's not Bill Gates' company. It's just normal Joe, you know, Joe Smith, and he's farming that land. He's making money from Bill Gates, you know, his corporation, paying them. So they're not making money off of the crops. They're making money because they have that land. Why do you think this is going on? Why are they trying to eliminate the American farmer? Or why do you think farming is gone? It's not as appealing as it used to be. I think it's always been a noble job. I really do. From sun up to sundown, you worked your butt off, and then, you know, you really probably never had a life. So to me, you did a noble job to feed people, to, you know, keep the price of grain, to keep the price of corn, all that to a minimum. And now we've gone overboard by hiring foreign entities to own the land and just pay the farmer. So I don't know. When and why do you think that's happening?
Our agriculture took a big change in the 1960s and 70s. That's about the time my daddy decided that he was getting out as a full-time farmer. He seen, I guess, the writing on the wall. Of course, my family was cotton farmers, dairy farmers at one time, and then we kept farming, but we went a lot smaller. We went to more what we call truck farming: watermelons, cantaloupes, peas, stuff like that. But you know, you had the farm crisis there in the 70s. You know, a lot of us remember when all the tractors went to Washington, D.C. and then you had a lot of people committing suicide in the 80s. A lot of farmers were taking their lives because they were so far in debt and they didn't know what to do. But during that time period, you had several other things going on that a lot of people, I know most people in this chat are going to know what I'm talking about. That's when the herbicide and pesticide companies really went to pushing their products. Also, this is when a lot of your companies started buying a lot of farmland, because especially in the 80s, because a lot of people just went bankrupt, and these corporations started grabbing a hold of all this land. And, you know, they knew they could farm it, but what they did, you know, they hired people to farm it for them, just like what's going on now. I don't really I don't know how much land is owned in this country now by a company farming it, but I know it's probably way up there. You know, because every year I don't forget how many farms are leaving, you know, what they consider family farms, you know, that's just dropping out every year.
I can tell you.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you from where I lived, you know, we lived basically in the suburbs, but when I grew up in that area, there were a lot of farm fields. And when we left to move to Tennessee, all those farm fields were now housing communities, plats. They had really gotten rid of all those farmers sold their land off. And, you know, somebody posted on here, what was her name? Martha? I'm sorry, she's new to chat, but she posted, you know, a lot of farmers are,
There we go.
Yeah, farmers are land rich, but cash poor.
Right. Yeah.
And that,
yeah,
you know, that makes sense. I mean, it's just the lack. So in our area here in Tennessee, we have one of the highest rates or highest population of cattle.
I think it's the third highest in the state of Tennessee.
Third highest in the state of Tennessee. So we see a lot of cows
right.
all over. But I always wonder, how are those farmers succeeding? Are they making money? Or are they just getting by? Because that's what I hear a lot about farming anymore, is you're basically doing it just to get by. You're not getting rich. Banks and everything own the equipment you use and everything else. Right. I mean, that's probably why farmers, if they get the opportunity to sell off their land, a lot of them are selling it off. You know, these data centers coming in. I would imagine if somebody's been struggling for years and been trying to operate a farm, you know, if you're offered a few $1 million to step away, you're probably going to do it unless you're, you know, a patriotic person that doesn't want to sell your land off and keep your land for your family. But
well,
go ahead.
When I was 22 years old, I went to our farm agency, the U.S. Farm Agency, which is Natural Resources, Department of Natural Resources, USDA. And the guy that was our agent for this area knew him. And I went to talk to him about me going full-time farming. Back then, there was a ton of land around here open. A lot of people had done quit farming. It was hay fields, pastures, you name it, just laying around, you know, laying out. And I went and talked to him, and because I thought about trying to buy 200 or 300 acres. And, you know, when I went in, you know, I started talking to him, told him what I was thinking about doing. And he basically said, son, don't do it. And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean don't do it? He said, you go buy that land. He said, you're going to fight to keep that land the rest of your life. He said, number two, the equipment that you got to buy now, and for you to be able to sell. He said, because, see, they dock you. I don't know. A lot of people don't know. I know a lot of people grew up farm families know they'll dock you on trash and your row crop stuff. That's why herbicides and pesticides became a very strong thing in farming, because you go and have some weed seed in your corn or in your cotton or in your soybeans, they dock you for that. They take samples, and it knocks your money down. So for the farmers to be able to make it, and of course they've been sold something, and a lot of them have realized now that they went down the wrong road. And a lot of farmers try to form coalitions and stuff like that, and they work for a while, then they get infiltrated, I think. But
I'm sure.
The one
I'm
here,
sure.
You know, they get infiltrated. But like that guy told me that day, he said, Mark, he said, you will do better to work you a public job, you know, like I do now. And he said, if you want to farm on the side and do like you doing now, watermelons, cantaloupes, peas. He said, have you a few cows, cut your hay. He said, don't get into the big stuff. Leave it alone. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and I've sit here personally watched since the 80s, I've watched how many people their farms get sold or they just shut down. You know, their kids didn't want to deal with it. You know, and a lot of them did hold on to their land. What they did, a lot of them would just lease it out to another farmer, or they went and, like I was talking about earlier, a lot of them started planting pine trees on their property.
Yeah.
Because they could see where in 20 years, because these pines we got now are more of a hybrid pine. They're supposed to be able to cut within 20 years, and they're about right. They grow fast. Plus, they come fertilize them. They'll fertilize them with a helicopter, and also a lot of people don't know they put Roundup on them too. They have a certain type of Roundup. It won't kill them trees, but it'll kill stuff up under them. Now, some people do that. Not everybody, because of course you have to hire a company to come in and do that. So, in the end, you know, this country is having to depend more and more on food from other countries. We used to supply everything. We used to be the biggest wheat exporter. I think we were exporting wheat all over. We were the biggest cattle producer. I mean, this country produced our own stuff. We used to produce our own steel, our own timber, our own energy. I mean, everything. We didn't have to outsource nothing. I mean, we had it here. There was a few little nitpicking things we didn't have, but I think there's a plan, and that plan does, like I was talking about, does away with cattle. Corporations buy more and more land. Now you got these carbon credits they keep talking about. And, you know, that's supposed to help save on taxes and all. I hadn't really understood this carbon stuff myself. I mean, when we're talking about something that is naturally produced. So, I mean, I just can't figure it out. But, I mean, how are you going to tax something that's naturally produced? But, you know, we know they will, you know. But,
sure.
You know, so I think there's a plan. And, of course, I go biblical with my stuff. I think it comes from a bigger source that's putting all this in a plan, and to implement that plan one day, it'll be implemented, and it'll be a form of control. Because the Bible does say it, you know, does say that one day you'll have to work a day's wages for a loaf of bread, and I think it means that literally. You know,
Mark. Not too long ago, there were in Georgia, as a matter of fact, there were things called the Georgia Guidestones. And on these Guidestones, they had a list of I guess, rules and what they wanted the human population to be. It was basically the New World Order. That's what was going to be a part of the New World Order. It was going to be a population. They were going to eliminate old people. They were going to, you know, all these different things. Well, somebody's since blown it up or torn it down. They never did figure out who did it. But I think the reason they probably tore it down is because this stuff is starting to come true. These things are starting to take effect, and they were realizing that, you know, whoever posted this thing knew what was going to happen. And that was just giving people a chance to rise up back then, you know, with these Guidestones and knowing what people laughed at it. Oh, why would they want the population to be, you know, so much less than what it is now? You know, everybody we're overpopulated, but yet you and I've talked on Bigfoot channels that we have so much unexplored area in this world that you can't tell me we're overpopulated. So and none of it's made sense. And then, you know, so we kill off the animals, we disease the animals so that, you know, we start dying off along with the animals, and we eat the meat that they're making for us that we know has got, you know, everything from the vaccines in it to whatever they want to put in it, that we have no control of what's in it. And it just seems so. To me, it's obvious, and a lot of people, especially like in our chat, think it's obvious what's going on. You yourself,
it is
included.
And they even tell you, you know, they even tell you point blank what they're up to, and people just don't pay it no attention. They'll come out and say, "Hey, we got to drop this population, and hey, we got to we got to give everybody this, but where they'll stay healthy. But in the long run, that ain't healthy.
And one other excuse is, Mark, is that they don't have enough food to feed everybody. But yet we're talking about,
man, this country here, this country right here can feed the whole world.
Absolutely.
If you didn't grow food nowhere else in this world but the United States, and you went to putting the plow back in the ground and getting the cattle back and all that, we could feed this whole world. But where the problem comes in with feeding the world is half these other countries never let their people get the food. It sits on ships and rocks because they play in these politics. I mean, for years we've shipped all this food to Africa, and I hate it for them people. And we went over and tried to help them get farming going, but they stay in war all the time.
Yep,
so
exactly.
They can't farm when you're continuously fighting every day. And I hate it for them people because a lot of innocent people are suffering because of politics. And look how much food this country just wastes. Look at the food.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, ain't no telling how much, even though that food ain't really good for you, how much fast food places, the grocery stores, all the other restaurants throw away every day. I mean, ain't no telling how much food, and that goes back to Bigfoot, why they're coming to the dumpster because they know it's full of food. Well, that's another subject.
When I was a kid, I stayed at this place called Camp Kern. It was a camp for kids. You go there, and it was like a field trip for us. You're there for a week, and I learned a lot of things. But one of the things they would do there is when you dumped your trash in the cafeteria, you dumped all of your food in one trash can. And then you threw your milk cartons, your whatever paper trash into another. And they would take all of that food in that trash can, in the food can, and they would take it to the local pig farms and feed the pig farms.
Right.
I haven't seen that since those days. I haven't seen that anymore. I don't hear anybody ever doing that anymore.
I don't do that. I don't. You got a few around here where we live. We got a few farmers markets. If you know the guy, he'll let you come in and he'll give you the fruit or vegetables that's starting to rot for, animals. But now the schools, the businesses, they have to put it in the dumpster now. That's where they're supposed to put it. And I mean, it's crazy. Probably what gets thrown away. And how many fields do we waste in crops?
Absolutely. Yep.
There's no telling. And, even the government way back yonder, told people to plow underground, and they pay you so much not to plant it. And I understand what they were trying to do to a certain point. They were trying to get the money up where farmers could make more money, but it really wasn't the farmers making the money. It's that middleman like they always do. And in the top man.
Yeah.
I ain't never understood how somebody in New York can put the price on corn, soybeans, and cotton and everything when he's in a 3-piece suit and goes in the office every day.
Correct.
How does
and he gets
right,
Well, just like food on the stock market makes no sense to me as well. Right. It's a commodity, so it goes onto a commodity market and gets in the stock exchange. And you mentioned earlier that we could be a self-sufficient country. We could be a self-sufficient country all the way around. I'm talking, from our fuel to our food to clothing to everything. And I kind of understand to an extent of why we do things with other countries. It's part of the trade. We get their precious minerals. They get our crops. They get our wheat. We know that wheat now is, I believe, Ukraine is actually one of the largest, if not the largest producer of wheat. And we were buying wheat from Ukraine. And it's like what I've always said that we should be, if we want to be the most powerful nation in the world, both financially, which we know that we're $39 trillion in debt, we should make everything self-sufficient. Whatever we have left over from our money or whatever, then we can help out other nations. But we don't operate that way. We can't take care of our people. We can't take care of veterans. We can't take of all these people, and we throw food away. And that makes no sense to me. You know, I know that there's a guy I used to work with. His wife worked at a school cafeteria, and they literally, you could buy the food or they'd just throw it out. And I'm talking like boxes of pizzas, whatever. Now look, poor people, homeless people are going to eat whatever they can get their hands on. It doesn't matter if it's healthy or unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why we're not utilizing that as a country, as our politicians. Well, we know why our politicians don't. It just, I can never wrap my head around that, because we should be taking care of our people before anybody else.
Right here.
We should not help other nations. We should save for emergency. Correct. Correct.
We used to. I mean, we used to, us first. I mean, we changed our country, done a complete flip flop in World War One. That's when we really entered the world, I guess you would say.
Well,
we started.
You had J.D. Rockefeller. You had the big money people. You had J.D. Rockefeller in the oil industry and the trains, and I can't remember everybody. Then he got into pharmaceuticals. So those groups of people wanted complete control over everything. And, you know, from there, corporations were created to take more control. Politicians were paid under the table to make sure that those corporations could still have control and do pretty much whatever they wanted. And that's the problem I'm having with farming these days, is how our farmers are all being thrown to the curb, you know. And it's just not in the States. We saw France, we saw Denmark, we saw Germany, all these farmers in tractors driving on their capitals because they wanted to go green. They wanted them to stop growing certain crops. And it just, none of it made sense. I mean, it does to me. It's to push out the farmers, and it's to push out food that can be healthy for everybody. We've watched multiple documentaries about the government coming in and shutting, the Amish community. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they shut his farm down, killed all his animals, and pretty much, he's been fighting it in court forever. We watched a documentary called Farmageddon, where the USDA, people were selling raw milk, and the USDA came in, confiscated all of their milking equipment, eliminated all their cows. What are you killing the cows for? You know, so none of it.
That's beyond devastating.
None of it made sense.
And it's totally unnecessary.
Right. It is. And I see, on a lot of these homesteading channels that me and Rebecca watch, I see it all the time where they come in and kill out people's flocks of chickens, or they'll come in, move their cows out, and over nothing. Right. Of course, right now, we've got this new screw worm they're talking about.
Yep.
And this thing has been around for ages. It ain't nothing new. If you've been in the cattle, we're always watching, and anybody's own cattle knows that you got to watch out for stuff.
Right.
Any livestock, you got to keep an eye on, because flies is one of the worst things you can deal with in the summer. And a cow, goat, or anything, they can walk by a fence, nick themselves, or limb, nick them, or I was talking to a fella today at work. One of his horses got snake bit the other day, and the horse died from the snake bit. Because where the snake got him up on the neck, right in the artery, and it swelled up, and they didn't know it. They couldn't find him for a little while, and they finally found him on the backside of a pond. So animals can get into something every day.
Sure.
So that's why. So you go look, pay attention. Now, our government had that program that eradicated the screw worm, in this country by using sterile flies. They would take these male sterile flies, and I don't really know how that works, but, and it eradicated, just like we've eradicated some other things in this country that we don't hardly have problems with anymore. But I'm wondering if this screw thing is a little deeper. Of course, that helps get rid of some more cows.
Sure.
But also, is it a form of retaliation from somebody else?
You know,
If you
hey,
get
what a
what I'm
great way
saying.
to, what a great terrorist thing to do, right? Go for the
Yeah.
food supply.
Could that
Oh
be?
yeah.
Could that be a possibility?
Hey, yeah.
We know we've made the country to the south of us pretty mad,
That's true.
especially certain individuals we have made really mad. But we put a dent in some of their operations. You know, could that be an act of retaliation? I mean,
Mhm.
and I'm going to say this: there's some people already brought that up. There's some
Oh yeah.
people have brought that up that could be a little act of retaliation.
Mhm.
I mean, we can't prove it, but is it? I mean, there's a possibility. It's just like with the ticks. You know, I've seen a few of the videos where guys picked up these boxes full of ticks. I mean, was it staged? I have no idea. Is it a,
Right.
you know, but I do know that the, you know, the Lone Star tick, the one they say can kill a lot of cattle, kill a lot of deer. I mean, we're going back just like we was talking about a while ago. You start wiping out parts of our food supply, it'll force most people to start going to other forms of food. They already control the cattle and the chickens.
Yeah.
The only thing they don't real control real good right now is goats and sheep, but they'll get them too. They'll
Oh,
sooner
yeah.
or later get them. They'll come. They'll hit that in the head too.
Yeah,
And, it's
I've
like
actually
I've
got,
told everybody. Go ahead.
I've actually got paper here that talks about the screwworm and saying it could affect not just cattle, but horses, sheep, goats, wildlife, everything. So here we are again, you know, back like with the ticks, you know, they're all, it's like they've all formed a gang, and they, all these creatures, these little critters have formed a gang, and they want to wipe out our food supply. It's getting crazy.
Well, I know our Department of USDA has always used bugs to control other bugs, and some of that makes sense. I understand some of it. You know, I understand some of that reasoning that you take one bug that'll take care of another bug, and that's what happens in nature. You have bugs that work on against each other, but I think a lot of times we get out of control with them, and we start having problems out of that bunch. You know, out of the ones that we were using.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, something tells me, even after I read it, something tells me there's something more to this. I mean, it just popped up
Agreed.
at a weird time.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, it popped up at a time that I've heard about them. You know, we got all these data centers going on everywhere, and they're doing a lot of eminent domain on people on them. They're
Yep.
just going, and the judges are ruling with the companies. I'm just like, wow, you know. And I mean, I'm talking about on private land. You know,
Right.
I can see where the government might can take some land for public use, like they got to put a highway. That's the best way to put the highway because it's going to be lost, you know, or put a bridge across somebody's property. Or, but when you come in there and it's a private organization that can do eminent domain,
Mm.
it ain't right. That ain't
No,
right.
it's not.
It ain't supposed to be that. You know, it ain't supposed to be that way. You know,
Yep.
the eminent domain is supposed to be used to help the public, you know, as far as transportation or something like that. Right now, there's a battle going on somewhere where a railroad is wanting to go through this middle of this farm. It's a 150-year-old farm. It's been in one family 150 years. They're wanting to cut a railroad right through the middle of that property to get to a rock quarry that's on the other side of it. The landowners don't want the railroad through there because it'll cut right through their property. They're going to have, in fact, I think it's going to go right through one of the barns. So they're going to have to tear down a barn that's like 150 years old. It's still in good shape. And they went to court. And, you know, the people are saying this is private land. That quarry is a private company. You know, there's no justification here. But they said, one judge said, well, the rock will be used in highway building, so there is a public interest in that. So they're going around and stuff. See, they're going around, and that's how they're getting people. And right now in Georgia, there's a bunch of people just pretty much lost their property from Georgia Power, wanting to put a big transmission line to a database, to a data center or surveillance center. I need to get correct in my terms, but just pretty much went in there and took it, and the judge ruled public use. I mean,
I just saw a video of a woman, and I'm not sure if it was Tennessee or maybe it was Georgia. Not sure. It was a southern state, and they were wanting to buy her farm that had been in, like you said, I think it had been in a family for hundreds and hundreds of years. And her boys are the ones running it now. Her husband had passed, and the whatever Palantir or whoever has this company that wants to come build a data center has literally offered her millions and millions and millions of dollars. And she said, no, this is my land. My father bought this land, or their grandfather, excuse me, maybe great grandfather, and I'm not getting rid of my land. Now I'm waiting to see if they take eminent domain to take her land away from her that way. And, who was it? I can't remember the family out west, and I should, that rose up against the FBI and the USDA and said, you're not taking anything of ours eminent domain wise. And they literally had a run in with the FBI. And remember that their cattle was on, they had a cattle farm, and the cattle was getting on government land, and the government was taking their cows and going to fine them or whatever. And they were like, that's just vacant land. We're using the land. And the government said, well, we're not going to let you do it. And when the government showed up with their, FBI showed up, the farmers and the I guess militias showed up and said, no, you're not going to do this to us. We are American citizens, and this is our country, and you're not coming in to take anybody's land, anybody's cows, or anything. And I think we've had examples since then, and I'm not going to throw dates around, but it was a time in 2020, a certain day in 2020, when there was an example set on purpose to tell people, you will not rise against the government, because this is what we're going to do to you. And I think that's what's going on. You don't see, you've seen truckers revolt in Canada. We watched that, days and days of that. And the Canadian government froze their bank accounts. These people couldn't get into their bank accounts. In the United States, they talked about trucker convoys, but I think people got so leery because the Canadian government did what they did, that the American government, the semi drivers were like, I can't afford to take, have my bank account frozen. I'm going to lose money driving my rig to Washington. And if they freeze my bank account, then I can't. So they're creating ways that you can't go after the government. So by taking your land, there's nothing you can do. I mean, how do you fight back against that? And that's what's scary, is people losing their land to build a train track or to build a data center. That is so wrong to me. It's Weavers. Thank you, Lori. Ruby, right. So that's the kind of stuff that really bothers me, as far as the farming community and farmers getting shut out of their farms and not being able to do something maybe they have been doing for hundreds of years in the family. And besides the bugs, again, we know they're weaponized, and doing what they're doing to the cattle and doing what they're doing to the pigs and the chickens. One chicken has bird flu, let's kill off millions of them, because they might have it too. Instead of creating a system where we can check if all the birds have bird flu, we just will go ahead and kill them all.
Well, I mean, same thing with the CWD that came out in the deer. A lot of state agencies, I mean, we had it happen here in Alabama a couple of years ago, up around where Coombo lives, up in that northwest corner. They told everybody shoot everything. And then they supposed to test the deer, but they told them shoot everything. I mean, they the they pretty much does and bucks, shoot them all. And I'm gonna tell you, most of the states get their directive from the U.S. Wildlife and Fisheries Department, because that's where the money comes from. We pay the taxes on the guns and the ammo and all this. It goes to the U.S. government, then they filter it back down to the states, and so they're going to listen to what they're telling them to do. I wonder a lot of times. I know it's going to sound crazy if that ain't a man-made disease. I know the disease exists. There's no doubt about it. But I wonder if it's not as bad as they saying it is. And I wonder if also if it was a man-made disease, just like when we had the mad cow craze years ago.
I remember that.
You don't hear nothing about that no more. That's just went out the window, And I mean, there for a while, and there's another thing to attack cattle about. If you notice, every so many years they come in and attack cattle.
Yep.
They go after them right off bat, and then they'll come over here and they'll fool with the deer. Both times, because that's the two things that we could survive off of in this country for a while. I mean, we wouldn't survive off of them for a long time, but we could. And that's two things that they'll hit. It goes all back to control. Control and money.
Mm-hmm.
Control and money.
Let me ask you this question, Mark. You've been in farming for a while. When did, because I've always wondered this, when we lived in Ohio, there was a lake up there, actually a couple lakes, but Lake St. Mary's, it was a man-made lake in Salina, Ohio, St. Mary's, Salina, Coldwater area. And literally now, I don't know if it's still, but they get that algae bloom where you can't fish, you can't do anything out of that. You're not even supposed to boat because of this algae that's growing in there. It kills all the fish. If wildlife gets involved, it's supposed to make them sick and kill them. Now, they blame this on the runoff from farm chemicals because it's a huge farming area in Ohio. So you've got, let's say, rain washes the chemicals into the water. Okay, I can see that happening, but here's my problem. How many years, when did they switch over to some of these chemicals? Do you know? Like when they switched over to make crops, not just, a good thing of crops, but make them bigger, make them, make a corn on the cob instead of, this big, make it this big and this big around. Because I know they do it. But when do you think they started doing that more and it started creating more issues?
Well, they've been playing with hybrids for a long time. I mean, man's been playing with that. I mean, you have some hybrid tomatoes and which is a hybrid. Now, a hybrid is where you just take two tomatoes and make a different plant, right? And, it's still natural, I guess you would say. It's just, but probably, I'm going to say in the 50s is when they really went to fooling with hybrids a lot. I remember my dad talking about some of the people trying to talk them into growing hybrid corn. And then I'm going to say 60s and 70s, because that's when you started hearing a lot of your Pioneer was probably one of the first big companies that come out with Pioneer corn and soybeans. I know everybody probably remember seeing the Pioneer signs on the side of the road by corn patches back in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And, GMOs were probably starting then. Of course, they got real popular here in the last 20-something years. But I'm going to say the 50s. I know they were pushing them. My grandfather, of course, was a cotton farmer. So when DDT come out, which is deadly.
Oh, yeah.
It's a deadly cotton poison. He used it 1 year. And he seen what it was doing to all the wildlife around there. All the birds were dying, squirrels, rabbits. I mean, my dad said wildlife just disappeared that year. So my granddaddy said, we ain't using that stuff. And he went back to whatever he was using for the cotton, which was a lot less deadly. So that would have been before World War II when my dad was a kid. So they were already using stuff then. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say in the 50s, I'd have to really go research and see exactly when a lot of that really, but I know they started pushing herbicides and pesticides real heavy, like in the 50s, 60s, but it really took off in the 70s and 80s, because that's about the time they come out with no-till. Tractor companies quit making cultivators. They went to making more spray rigs and all that. Went to liquid fertilizer. Was in that time period there. I know y'all probably remember seeing way back yonder the tractors out in the fields with the tanks on front of the tractor. Now they're on back on a big thing, but you used to see them on the front. They'd have drums. So and that was in the 70s when they was doing a lot of that. That was a lot of pesticides. And then the other thing that happens with pesticides and herbicides, and most of y'all know it in here, after a while that stuff gets where it's not effective. Either the bugs get immunity or the weeds and stuff get immunity to it. They build immunity up so it don't work no more. So they're continually having to come out with a new product and to kill weeds. And in that process, and I'm starting to hear a lot of farmers talk about, a lot of them are trying to go back to the old ways. Here last few years, there was a big craze going on with people buying old tractors back up. One reason, because John Deere had the computers in there and they were shutting people's tractors down while they was trying to farm. And then they couldn't get nobody out there to work on the tractors for a week or two. And these farmers just sitting here with stuff ready to go and nobody's coming. So a lot of the farmers say, hey, we'll go back and get that old equipment because it runs. And a lot of them have gone back to some of the old ways. And also people are getting back in what they call regenerative farming, which is the old style that we used to do in this country for years, is where you don't use chemicals. You let the land build itself. You let your animals do the work for you. It's a big, long process, but
right.
So that's when all that time period came. But now, one other thing a lot of people's finding out, they're having to use more and more pesticides and herbicides to take care of stuff. Well, in that, they're also finding out that their land is getting sterile.
Oh boy!
And I got a good example. I got a friend that I used to work with. I'm fixing to have to run inside with this computer. It's raining. Hold on, y'all give me a minute.
Okay.
No problem.
Hey, y'all, the chat
be no rain, and here it comes.
Aw, the chat has been awesome for this episode.
Yeah.
Y'all have really put some great comments in there.
And keep it up, guys. We're here to learn. I've never farmed. I've never, lived anywhere to farm, but I've been doing a little research, quite a bit of research on the farming and the chemicals involved. And I look at the list of chemicals, and I'm not a big fan of anything I can't pronounce going into my soil or my food. And, I see names like there's, they've got all these different fertilizers, potassium fertilizers, phosphorus fertilizers, nitrogen fertilizers, and then you have say potassium, you have potassium chloride, potash, potassium sulfate, potassium nitrate. Well, like Mark said, once your farm starts getting, whatever critters you're trying to get off of your crops, and then once they get used to it, you got to throw another chemical in there and see what you're going to take from there. And it's
everything matters in it.
Yep.
And your pH level is going to change, and it all is a big piece of a puzzle. But I have a couple things to say. Another thing, what Mark was talking about, kind of going back in time for the tractors, for different reasons, like a lot of computer-based reasons. Another problem which we experience, with automotive and really everything is the time it takes for replacement parts.
Yeah.
The availability of replacement parts and where they're coming from.
I know Sandman mentioned cash for clunkers. And if you don't believe that that's not a government thing, what they're doing is they're buying up all the old cars. because those are the cars that don't have the computer systems. They'll take anything, tractors, they'll take anything at cash for clunkers. Another thing we've watched, the amount of junkyards that have been set on fire.
Right. Ain't that strange?
Yeah. And so again, we're talking older cars that don't maybe, that don't have computer systems are in there. And so people can't buy them now if they're on fire. They can't, it's not like they're taking cash for clunkers and turning these cars around and selling them back to the public. They're destroying them. And why? Well, then you have to buy a new car or a newer car with the computer system in it. So, everybody that has a computer in their car, whether it's brand new or 10 or 15 years old, 20 years old, that computer system can be messed with. Okay. Whether it's done, on the spot or from a distance, they can shut your car down. And, I know they talk about they don't do that in like car chases and stuff. They will. It'll get there. Trust me. They'll just shut you down. And I know they're talking about kill switches now. And I think that's been in the process of doing for quite a few years. They just haven't perfected it enough because you have to worry about distances. Now, if they put the kill switch in your car, they have the ability with satellites just to shut you down and find you. So not that you're doing anything bad, but if they want to, if you, for whatever reason, if they wanted, because they don't like what we're saying here, and I wanted to drive down the road, they could say, guess where you're not going? You're not going anywhere. So, but anyway, Mark's back. So, let's see, what else have we got here, Mark?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Another one Mark was talking about, like in the 70s and the changes in agriculture, the examples you gave, like 3 or 4, are so big. That would have really changed the industry. And looking at it from our time now, can't you see how that would have shifted how farming is done in many ways, if not all ways?
Oh, yeah.
But, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was going to say something completely different.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did. You shifted from what we call mechanical cultivation, which is a piece of metal on your tractor that, plows your fields. Of course, they put in there, going to save you time and fuel, which I give that, probably did. Wear and tear on the equipment. Yeah, I can see that. I can see some of those things, there's no doubt. And that's why I don't knock farmers that do it now, because I know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
They're trying to make a living and they're doing it best they can. And also, the cleaner the field is, of course, you sell, the more you sell your crop for, because you don't want, any foreign material in there, because they will dock you on it. They're going to look at it. They're going to take a sample. And if you got something in there that ain't supposed to be in there, you fixing to lose money.
Oh, wow.
And so, they want good crops coming in. But it did change. But when it done that, also it started taking the family farmer out of it more. And that's when it got to be more of a commercial, I guess you would say. And also that's about the point where young people couldn't go into farming. That they seen that, hey, this ain't going to work, There's just tons of stuff that goes toward this, and you have to really, look at it. And, of course, by doing that too, farmers had to start renting more and more land to make a living. You have to plant more and more. Where used to, the average farm in the United States, I think, was 250 acres. I think that was the average. Most people could make a decent living off that 250 acres. Well, when you started having to use herbicides, pesticides, and to grow more crops, you needed more land. Which there you went. Bigger the tractors got, the more the equipment cost.
A young person nowadays, why would they want to go into farming? I have a friend of mine up in Ohio, Blake. Hopefully Blake's on here one day in the chat, because I'd love to talk to him about some of this. But he went from trying to just have cows to now going, what oh, where your you grass fed, he was taking his cows, just taking them to the butcher shop and letting them, but now they were, he was giving them the chemicals they need, the stuff they needed. Now he's grass feeding these cows and watching everything. And then he's got one person, a friend of his that owns a butcher shop. They butcher the cows. So there is literally no chemicals getting on these cows. And he said that the amount of rules that he has to follow is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
So that he can call it organic.
Right.
And, I said, well, you can't get much more organic than not giving it chemicals. He goes, that's the thing. He's like, you do one thing wrong, you're not deemed organic. And it's.
And see, a lot of people don't realize now, organic don't mean purely organic no more.
Right.
The USDA is allowing so much pesticides and stuff to be in organic now. So the only way you're gonna know for sure what you're getting is to buy from your neighbor.
Yep.
And he tells you the truth about what he's growing and what he's using.
Right.
Or you find a small butcher shop that buys locally and keep up with who they're buying from, and then you'll know what you're getting. But it's Rebecca looked into all of this.
Yeah.
We're talking about doing this, and she can tell you some stuff she's seen is just crazy.
Are you bringing me into this show?
Oh yeah.
Come on in
For this.
Hey, Becca.
Becca, feel free to join in the conversation.
Ooh, I might do it off camera. How's that?
That's fine.
Hey,
you do what you want to do.
I know, I
just finished weed eating and all that stuff. So
Aw.
time for dinner.
Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty fresh on your brain, with the goats and everything and that new adventure. And I'm sure you learned a lot, have researched a lot to make that happen. And I'm sure you've had some jaw-dropping moments on things you've read about it, and not even just necessarily what you've experienced.
Well, we're talking about how farming, like the organic now, really ain't organic, and how I was mentioning about when you was in the extension service that you got to look at the new laws they were talking about. Remember the big one that was what 200, 300 pages?
Yeah, that food safety thing.
And it was even, and I'll give you.
I sat in on that class. It was, I can't remember if it was 6 hours or 4 hours, and they just hit the highlights of all the things they expect farmers to do if they are producing any product that will be eaten raw, basically.
Wow.
And there was even something about if a bird goes over your field and uses the bathroom in that field, that's so many acres you got to take out.
So much footage around
now,
that.
how do you gonna control that?
Yeah, how do you monitor that? Like you couldn't get them all.
Or if a dog, your neighbor's dog happens to go use the bathroom in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't monitor all that.
And they expect you to if you're serving a crop that's eaten raw.
Yeah.
And it just baffles me because it doesn't go the other way around.
No.
It just for what favors them. What's the mission? And that's when you have to check all these boxes and make sure you're complying. Well, it doesn't work the other way around.
Right.
No, they do not have to comply as long as you are.
I think it's a way just to knock more people out of the system. People look at it and say, give up. I ain't even dealing with that.
Well, that is what we did.
Yeah.
Because in order to participate in farmers markets and stuff like that, we were going to have to jump through all of those hoops, have people to our property, inspecting the farm, making sure that our records were complete. I mean, they wanted what day we applied compost even to the garden, because it couldn't be applied X amount of months before the crop would be ready.
Yeah.
But yet, they let people take sewer sludge and put it on fields, and not a word said about it.
Wow.
I know it's changing, but that was
again, that goes to raw food and cooked food. So if you're growing a crop that is typically eaten cooked, all these rules go out the window. but tomatoes and cucumbers, salads, carrots, all of your fruits, you know.
Mhm.
I can't remember. There was one on the list or one that wasn't on the list. Maybe it was corn that wasn't on the list.
Mhm.
And a lot of people eat corn from the field sometimes. So
Wow.
it
Martha,
was some hoops.
Martha Haney, put that back up there. I want to read that because I want to touch on something there. Martha Haney, thank you for being here. You're new to the chat. I haven't seen that name before, but she said, my mama used to tell me I ate earthworms as a kid. We messed in the dirt and didn't really wash up. It didn't kill us. But back in the 60s, there wasn't as many chemicals and poisons. And you're correct. And with them talking organic, you know, if I was to go out here and pull some of my grass and take samples of that or the soil underneath my grass, I'm going to have chemicals in it because we know that chemicals fall from the sky, whether it's airplanes flying over, whether it's airplanes dropping stuff and flying over. So for some of those rules that, you know, a bird pooping on your, you know, that should baffle you right there, that there are chemicals everywhere. You know, if I was to take a sample of the top of, you know, or the pollen in the air, there's chemicals in that, you know, and that's what's to me scary is that they're dictating on what you can, dictating you to you
Yeah.
on these rules,
Farmstead.
but there's chemicals in everything, you know, poisons.
Yeah.
It is, and Rebecca's got a good example of that. You want to talk
Have
about?
y'all heard about Three Rivers Homestead and how they had the vapor drift from a nearby farmer come drift over their property? And it basically they're used to it because they live near the farm, so they smell it and they go inside for the day and then they come back out and everything's usually fine. Well, this time they came out and there were strange little dots on their plants, and they had harvested some of the salad and stuff and had it for dinner. It ended up being the vapor drift coming across from the nearby farm, and it basically affected everything in their garden, everything on their property, the trees, everything. The kids were out in the yard playing in it, basically. They broke out in rashes. They all got sick from the salad that they ate and everything.
What about
if you
animals?
Heard about that? Y'all should go look that up. Three Rivers
I'd like
Homestead.
to.
Three
What
Rivers
about
Homestead,
what
okay.
about animals? Do they have pets or livestock that seem to be
I
affected?
didn't fully watch about
Yeah.
the animals and stuff. I did watch about the eggs. They did have chickens. The chickens are okay, I think, but they're dumping all the eggs for the time period too, because
Yeah.
the chickens got dusted basically by the vapor, and anything that they ate, like bugs and stuff, were affected by the vapor too. So they're just dumping eggs left and right.
Wow.
The
Wow.
whole garden that's going to feed them for this year. They had to pull every bit of it out, and I don't know what they're going to do about the soil.
That's so scary. I mean, that's obviously so sad for them, but it's so scary because that can be done so easily anywhere they want to do that.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
it.
we have farmland near us.
Yeah.
It puts things into perspective about how easy it is.
Right.
And see,
Well,
even,
you know-
even
Go ahead, Mark. You go
I
ahead,
was gonna
sir.
say, even our county, for years, bush hogged the side of the roads. They don't do that no more. They spray Roundup. Have a big truck, got that big sprayer, and he'll come right down through here, and he'll just spray them ditches. He sprays everything.
He don't care about the creek. He don't care
He
about
don't
the
he don't
pond.
care about none of it. And I know a few years ago in this county, somebody's pond got run. They seen him when he come down the road, and he didn't stop spraying. They had a little creek that run into their pond. Well, the next day, these people, all their fish were floating in their pond. Well, they were smart. They went and took fish out, and they got samples of water, and they carried it to an independent lab somewhere. And that chemical was all in there, and the county ended up having to pay him some money on that. But
Wow.
so even your city or your county or even the state are spraying them because they don't want to have to buy bush hogs and
They'll pay the
or
labor.
pay the labor, so that they're just using herbicides. And the people that's putting the herbicides out, I don't even know if they're trained for it. This and I know ain't because he sprays creeks and stuff with it. So or he just don't care.
Persimmon trees.
Mark, one of the things I noticed, and I just thought about this is okay, so you're talking about chemical Roundup in the creek water, and let's talk about some of the train derailments where chemicals were put in the waters, blah blah blah. So when farmers water their fields, aren't they pulling from a local water source like a river or a creek? So you've got all that poison and it's in these creeks. I'm not saying there's a ton of poison, but you've got poison now that so how does an organic farm, how would they water their crops?
They're pulling from those same sources. Going back to that food safety law thing, they have to test their water depending on the source every 3 months or every 6 months or every year. They have to have the test results put in their paperwork.
Wow. Which probably costs
They have to know the runoff areas. They have to plan for the runoff to keep it out of the crops and stuff. But again, this is not like the big cornfields or the soybeans. This is anything that is eaten raw, basically, for the food safety thing. I don't think there's many regulations for like corn and stuff that is cooked still.
Wow. Martha Haney again says Time Beach in Missouri, south of St. Louis on the Merrimack River, was contaminated with dioxin. Government came and dug up the soil and burned it, took out the whole town. I've heard actually quite a few stories similar to that. That they come in and burn the soil and basically it shuts down the whole town, especially farming communities. We don't excuse me, we don't know what goes on out there, what our government does as far as testing soils and eliminating soils. They put these chemicals out there, test them, and then they find out how they work on farm crops. And if they're not good, if it's not a good crop, are they regrowing on that land, or are they coming in and topping that soil off, destroying that soil, and then starting all over again? This is something I don't know. I'd be interested to see if they do that.
Yeah, and all these chemicals have a breakdown period, supposedly, but their half-lives is, supposedly not that long, but then they still have residual stuff that's in the soil. And the more you do it, the higher that buildup is.
And I got a good example of that. I was going to mention it a while ago. I had a friend that was renting out farmland to a cotton farmer. He decided he was going to pull back one of the fields, make it into a hay field, because he done got in the hay business. And he was needing more land for hay, because he had a big clientele for horse and cow hay. So I think he took back 70, 80 acres of this row crop land, got it in good shape, planted Bahia grass. It took him 7 years before he could cut hay off that field.
Wow.
7 years. Now, he got good rain. He said the rain wasn't a problem. He done everything he was supposed to do with fertilizer, lime. He done everything by the book, but it took him 7 years to get where he could get hay off that field.
Because that soil was.
He could get little parcel areas he could cut, but it took 7 years to get that field back the way it was, And he said, man, don't tell me that stuff ain't doing some stuff, So, and that's just a prime example. But that's where that regenerative farming comes in. It's supposed to help get them toxins out of the ground quicker, but it just takes time. And
depends on the chemical.
Depends on the chemical. And there are some plants that will help withdraw that stuff. Sunflowers is one. There's some other ones that help, take heavy metals out of the ground, work on that. But like we was going back to saying a while ago, they're already having problems with the herbicides and the pesticides not working like they used to. Because, plant life is just like bug life. It's where it can get tolerant of it.
Right.
And germ life.
And germ life.
Antibiotic resistance, anybody?
Oh, yeah. All kind of stuff. So it's a big tangled web, and we know where where it goes back to. And, you know, yeah, Grazon, that's another one that a lot of people have no idea about Grazon. And boy,
Even the people that use it don't tell people that they sprayed those
Right.
fields.
right. And they use
Oh,
Grazon
wow.
in hayfields, you know, especially like horse people.
They spray it on the hay
Yeah.
fields, and then they bale the hay and they feed it to the horses or the cows. And it comes out through the poop still. It is not broke down at all. So when you
Yeah.
use that poop and you compost it and it goes in your garden, you're going to lose your crop because of Grazon in it.
Wow.
And I know
I
several
have heard
people
of
have found out the hard way about that. They have bought, you know, like cleaned somebody's barn out, planted their crops, you know, beautiful crops. A couple of weeks later, all the crops just, whoop, you know, and then they went to trying to figure out what happened, and they took samples and Grazon in it. And on the bag of Grazon or on the bottles, I've read it one time just to see.
It says don't use it.
It tells you do not use compost. You know, it tells you do not use compost that Grazon
Don't
has
use the
put in.
poop in compost.
And it says it can take up to 10 years
Wow.
to get out of that compost, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about that in classes, and I couldn't remember the name, but I know they said like the horses, they could digest it without issue. It wouldn't affect them, but it would be passed
Same.
along, and you got to watch out for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's
So if you just use a regular mixed grass hay, your chances of getting a Grazon sprayed hay is going to be very slim. Your typical specialty hays or horse hays, Timothy or alfalfa and all those, if you're wanting a straight hay, then you're more than likely going to have a Grazon crop because they don't want all the mixed grass stuff in there.
Oh,
You know, what do we do? What do we do as a people, right?
keep
Yeah,
talking
I
about
mean-
it.
We're cutting our own hay now. And
Good
I've
for you.
always, when we bush hog the field, I've always gone out there and raked up what he cuts and called it hay, basically. So, I mean, there's little things you can do if you've got the ability, but I mean, you still can't cover like acid rain and what comes from other places into your own property.
some of it's a lost cause. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
It's a lost cause. Yeah, but you can't, we can't control everything. And, you know, best thing you can do is try to build your soil best way you can with your own animals if you can, which everybody don't have the land to do that or the time.
And don't buy near a row crop field.
Yeah, don't buy don't buy right next to a big row crop area. I mean,
Yeah.
I like farmers. I mean, I am one. I have nothing against them, but I know if I'm going to do some farming, I don't need to live right next to a big cotton farm or something, or a big corn patch where they plant, spraying. I know I don't need to be there.
Yep.
Because they're going to use it. And I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, but they can't control everything either.
Yeah, it would be residual that gets on yours.
Well, they're
you
they're
can't-
doing it. They're doing it for money. The more money they make. It's unfortunately the smaller farms have to deal with it.
And
If
for
you're next,
ease.
yeah, if you're next to a big farm, you're going to probably have to deal with it. You're not going to, you're not going to make a lot of money if you're trying to stay organic. Obviously, you won't be able to be organic. So it's just always making me think, why have we done this why have they done this to us? Yeah, it's great to eat a big ear of corn, go out and buy, corn that big in a plastic wrap with foam, everything that's bad for you that your corn sits in at the store, and to buy it from, that's organic, it costs you more money, but yet the people producing the organic corn have to spend more money to try to make it, stay
It's
organic.
not just spending more money, it's the labor side of it too, because
right.
if you're organic, you're putting the work in.
Mhm.
That's
It's
Crazy.
and that's why I say it's almost a no-win situation on a bunch of it, because it's almost like they already got us over the barrel and we can't get back off that barrel.
Mhm.
And then, like you said, with homesteading and how they're trying to eliminate homesteading to where, make a lot of rules with what you can do and what you could, like somebody mentioned earlier, there's places where you can't even collect rainwater.
Mhm.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is something that I heard years ago that just, I'm like, you can't save rainwater.
Right.
Why?
Especially in the heavy drought areas. That's just like, why? Why not?
But it's a form of control. It's just a
Oh,
form
my
of
God.
control.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the
That's
ones that
sad.
are required to have the power system versus being off the grid, they still have to have the power from the power company.
Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just gotten to a point where, and I said this earlier, that why would you want to farm? If you're, basically somebody's leasing your land, but you're doing all the farming and all the work, and you're not making any money off of your crops, because that has to do with the stock market and how much your crops are worth. You could lose your butt, to be honest with you. And then I wanted to mention, when I drive past these farm fields out here and I see a tractor that, looks like it probably costs about $250,000, I think to myself, yeah, that they had to take a loan out for this thing, probably for, I don't know how long you could take one, maybe 10 years. I don't know how long farmers can take $250,000 loan out for. Maybe there's an agriculture loan that you can get, but why would you want to get involved with that? You can't have one tractor. Then you got to have a big dump truck or whatever kind of truck to put your grains in. If you got corn, there's so much that goes along with that. And I think to myself, well, why would a farmer, there's so many regulations. Why would a farmer want to be a farmer? I'm glad they're there. I wish there were more, but I just don't see how. I see how they all get disheartened about farming. And,
and that's like what that guy, that extension agent or USD agent told me at the time. He said, don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, he said, you getting in something he said, I'm trying to give you a good advice. And I think he was. He was trying to keep me from getting in a bigger mess. And that's why he said, grow your watermelons, grow your cantaloupes, peas. You'll make a little money there, and you ain't under no regulations. You ain't got nobody bothering you. Do it that way,
And if the shit ever does hit the fan, pardon my French, you've got great bartering things there with your vegetables and, your fruits that you can grow, and your goats and your chicken eggs and all of that. That's the kind of stuff that people need to be doing in my book. Self-sufficient. The big farms are all going to get taken over if they haven't been already. We mentioned the shutdown of a lot of your meat packing facilities. I think it's all doomed for failure. It's all doomed so that the government can take it over and have complete control, like you said, of everything.
And that's what they want. And that's the ultimate goal. Is, I think they have a 2030 agenda and a 2035 agenda, and then there's a 2050 or something.
Yeah.
They got all these time marks they're wanting to hit. And, like they keep saying, I think it was the Economic World Forum that said, everybody won't own nothing, but you'll be happy,
Right.
And even, Musk come out and said here a while back, one of the best things that he could see happen would be a universal income for everybody.
Now that's next.
Yeah. So, we're living in a time like no other.
Oh,
really.
yeah.
We're living in a time that is kind of like before Noah. I know that we're getting biblical again, but like I told you, I base most everything I think of off the Bible. There's nothing new on the earth that ain't already been here at one time. Full circles, but I think we're coming back to that circle where you have a certain class that wants to rule everything, and they've been doing it for a long time. And now they're just letting everybody know out in the front about it. They got to the point they don't care no more.
Yeah,
and they're
agreed.
telling you what they're going to do.
I believe that we are in the society that it reminds me of the Roman Empire, where you had your Caesar, and the senators and everybody else was, you couldn't really succeed in life. There's the few, but you don't really have the way or the ability to succeed. You have guys like Elon Musk, who's a trillionaire. All power to him. He's created a lot of great things. I have nothing against somebody being a trillionaire. But you also have people that have worked. My father would have been a great example, who worked 10, 12-hour days, I'd say 6 days a week for 60 years. Well, 45, 50 years. Anyway, and really never really succeeded as far, he had a nice little house. They had that, but you were never going to be rich. And it was a tool and die company we had. So it's like you have to have a name, or you have to know somebody or a bloodline to really make it, in my eyes, in this world. You might get lucky. Somebody might come by your land for a couple mil, to build that data center I was talking about. But that's an issue. If it's a morality issue, is the way I look at it.
You say lucky, but if you have principles against that, people are standing up and they're saying, no, this is my family's land. We won't do that.
What happens when we sell all our land off, all of our, and somebody else owns your land? That's what we, go ahead, Mark, please.
There's one company wanting to do that right now. They want to buy everybody's homes up. And even the other day, I mentioned this to Rebecca, and she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "There's a company that wants to buy every house, apartment, everything they can buy in this country and lease it out." And guess what? Friday, I went by my mom's house, and in her mailbox was that company wanting to offer money for that house.
Wow.
Because they said, we noticed how they put it. What?
Go ahead and say the amount they offered.
Oh, you know how much they offered for that place? $27,000.
Whoa.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, 27,000, and I'm going like, they have lost their mind. But I guarantee you, watch them. There'll be people do that though, because they'll put in there in that stipulation. They'll say, "Well, here's what we'll do. We'll buy your home from you. We'll let you live in it for a small rental fee. As long as you're doing like we want you to do, we'll let you stay there. We'll pay you this lump sum, and then it's our house." It goes back kind of almost to the old plantation style, tenant farming style stuff again. It's almost like we're going back to that scenario again, which, like I said, things make circles. But where years ago, you had the sharecroppers. After the Civil War, the plantation owners still needed people to work crops. So what they did, they come up and say, "Here's what we'll do. I'll supply the land. I'll supply the seed. I'll supply the fertilizer. You supply the labor, and I'll give you a little bit of it, and you can live in one of my houses." Of course, them people never come out of that. They stayed sharecroppers because also what they figured out was the storekeepers in town would open lines of credit, and these tenant farmers and sharecroppers would go to town and they'd build up a credit. Well, at the end of the year, or whenever they had to pay their fee, they wouldn't have no money left over, so they couldn't do nothing. They couldn't go nowhere. It's just a cycle. So they were trapped in it. And that was white and black. A lot of people say just black people. No, this was white and black people.
Right.
And whoever else was poor. It was a trap system.
It sounds just like the coal mining industry was.
Yeah,
they brought the coal miners in. They built a city for them, but you were getting paid with, I think they called them chits or tokens, whatever, and you bought everything at the company store, and that's how it worked.
Well, they did that in the cotton industry too. A lot of the cotton mills, and I'm not going to knock them completely, because they did build houses and do a lot of stuff, and they had hospitals, and they built schools. I give it to them to a certain point. But like this town here had one of the biggest cotton mills in the Southeast at one time. One of the biggest cotton companies in the world, Avondale. They sold to Wrangler, Lee, all the blue jean companies. But when he first started, or his family started these cotton mills back in the 1800s, he came in, he built schools. He built what they call a mill village. I know y'all seen mill villages. I mean, it's just, houses almost all identical, and they're just stacked.
Oh, yeah.
Then he'd have a little town he would build there with a store, maybe a post office, and a couple of other things, and he would pay in tokens. And they'd take these tokens and go to the company store to buy their goods. And he would sell them the houses if somebody wanted to buy it, and he would take so much money out of their paycheck toward their house. Don't get me wrong, that probably helped a lot of people in the long run. A lot of them was able to purchase them houses, and they was able to go get food, but it's still a form of trapment.
Oh, yeah.
Because they never really get ahead,
Right.
And, and here in the 30s, when the Depression hit, these cotton mills went to booming because people started leaving the farms, going into work in the industry. And, it's just another little form of trapment. And I'm not going to knock it, because a lot of people, they made it through that. Were they rich? No. But, they did have a decent lifestyle, with it. But, and they did that with a lot of different companies back in. Just wasn't cotton or mining. It was other companies. Paper industry done it.
Sure.
Logging industry. I mean, all of them done it. But if you look at it, it is a form of trapment,
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, it's for me, it seems like a lot of people you really don't get the chance to excel. You don't get to.
Yeah, you're stuck.
You're just stuck here, and you're never going to be here. And that's kind of what we're starting to see again, Mark. I feel like, we talked about, her and I talked about, hey, going out and looking at trucks one day. This was years ago. We talked about going and looking at trucks. And when I walked up on a pickup truck that cost $120,000, I thought to myself, who in the world's buying these trucks?
It's insane.
Well,
Who can afford that?
Well, to find out, they'll give you the loan. Some places are going 7, even 10 years on these things. Well, when people are like, I want it, let's get it now. But they're not thinking of the consequences of the interest rate that you're paying on this vehicle. And for that $105,000 vehicle, you're going to pay, $175,000 in the long run if you wait the whole time to pay it off.
Right.
So even there, they still don't give you a way to move up in the world, because everything's costing more. You're not really making a lot more. So you're still, again, there's these people with bloodlines and names that are born to succeed. They know they're going to succeed. They've succeeded since birth. And then there's the people that have been working their butts off 24/7 a day. They don't really get to take a break, and they're barely getting by. They don't know any better because that's all they've ever had. And they appreciate that. But once they make any extra money, then that has the ability to change their life and really screw with it, to be honest with you. I went through that. I started living beyond my means and had got divorced and had to file bankruptcy. And if anybody in chat's never filed bankruptcy, you don't want to. Back when I did it, you could walk away free and clear, but you can't do that now. Now they just consolidate all your payments. But it's like in everything you are failed, you don't have the ability to succeed like life should be. You should have that. If you're working 12, 14 hours a day, you should have the ability to say, hey, look at all this money I'm making. This is great. But no, we just throw another tax on top of you. We'll just tax your land, that you already own when you bought your house. We'll throw some extra taxes on when you buy a vehicle. And it's never ending, and it's funny because here we are $39 trillion in debt and taxed out the ass. And so everything that we're talking about, like with talking organic farming, I'm sure you have to pay extra for certifications. You have to pay for somebody to probably come out and take soil samples. So there you go. It's like you're not, you don't have the ability to really succeed. And for farmers, that's horrible. I mean, it should be so easy for a farm. When I see a farm of 200 acres and they've got rows upon rows of corn and the silos look all new and got a nice, big, beautiful home, I'm thinking that's either money or somebody that's in debt up to their butt in loans. And a lot of people love living that way. I had a friend's dad that loved living. He's like, when I die, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to go after your family. But, you can live that rich lifestyle if you want, and then worry about paying your bills. As somebody that's been there and has lost everything twice, I don't want to live that way. And it's really tough for people not to live that way. If you're not making the kind of money you should be making because they're putting fees on everything and charging you whatever to be an organic farmer, it just, none of it makes sense, Mark. And, it goes to what we were saying in the beginning. They want control of everything you do. Next will be the digital IDs, the data centers. It's all there. It's all there. Let's flip a subject here. You talked to me last time we talked, and we were going to talk about it on the last show about Social Security and 401ks. If you could, please throw that back at me of what you're going to say. Like I said, I was trying to get the camera working if you talked about it. So if you could just fill me back in on that. Hi, Becca. Thanks for joining in.
Yes.
I'm going to milk now.
Aww.
Well, at least it ain't pouring down rain.
Yeah, it stopped. Thank
That
you.
little
Oh,
shower,
great.
I
Probably
guess it
just made it more humid.
Yeah. Of course, I'm getting close to that time period where hopefully I can retire here in a few years if we're still on this earth and whatever's going on. But of course, we don't know the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But I've started doing a lot of research on Social Security, 401k, looking at that, figuring out, hey, how am I going to do all this? Of course, I tell everybody, you probably need to go get you a financial person if you can. You really need to if you can, because what I have seen, what I've started watching is that Social Security to me is a trap. Well, both of them's a trap in a certain amount of way. And what I mean by that, they're going to get you on something if you don't watch it. And that's going to be either higher premiums on Medicare. They're might deduct some of your money, even though they say, well, you got 40 years of credit. They can still mess with you. And then when you go to, and you got to do these by certain time periods. There's the other little thing I noticed, like Medicare. Within so much time before your birthday and after your birthday, you got to be signed up. If you don't, you get penalized. Oh yeah. I mean,
my gosh.
What? And when you get up to a certain age, like if you got a 401k and say you ain't pulled no money out of it, when you get up to a certain age, you got to start pulling money out.
I literally, you say that I have to pull money out every year.
Yeah,
I have to. Yep.
Yeah, you have to turn out a certain amount, or if you don't, they'll penalize you on that and make your Medicare go up more. It's and anything that you do from a certain age to a certain age, you got to watch what you're doing, because if you go over an amount and they start counting $1 or something, $1 per every $2 or something, I still ain't understood that one real well yet, but it counts against you on stuff. They call it a IRMM or something, and they've got so many forms. But they talk about, you need to fill out this form, you need to fill out, and then the guy will tell you that half the time these Social Security agents don't even tell you about all these forms that could help people in the long run. A lot of time they just sign people up and just, you get what you get, But I know some people get on Social Security and never have an issue. I mean, I know my dad got on it, never had an issue. My mom.
I feel like that's probably a thing of the past, though.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. But now I'm hearing people having problems. You know, I hear this, I hear that. You know, I hear people getting money took back away from them on their monthly income because of this or something that happened. They sold a piece of property, or they sold something that threw them over this threshold that they didn't even know that would throw them over the threshold. And then even getting Medicare pulled from them is a penalty. You know, and I'm going, you know, we've paid in on now. How you get this pulled away from you? It don't make sense. So to me, it is a form of a trap. It's one of those, you better know what you're doing and do it at the right time, or it can catch you later on and mess you up with something. And of course, IRS is paying attention to all of this. Every time you make a withdrawal out of your 401k or IRA or whatever, you know, they report that also to the Social Security.
Well, Standing Stone says something here. Some states don't tax you, or they'll tax you after you take out a certain amount. I know that Tennessee has a certain amount you can take out, but then anything after that, then they hit you pretty hard.
Yeah.
So you got to really be careful with that. Now, the amount that I'm supposed to take out every year is not anything that's going to hurt me. When I was in Ohio and I quit I didn't quit my job. My job disappeared. I took that 401k after one of my divorces and used it, and I had to pay a 10% penalty on that. And I'm like, this is money I've paid into all of this stuff. And I know that, you know, all I can say is the amount they took out was like, you know, they said, well, you get this much. I'm like, cool. It was like, well, if you don't take taxes out, then the IRS gets it. So you got to take taxes out. I was like, well, what do I take out? He's like, I'd take at least 10% because they're going to take probably 10. And I'm like, it makes no sense that you pay into this for X amount of years, and then your company's matching what you're paying into it, if they are, you know, in your 401k, and you're losing that sometimes. You're being taxed harder than for more than what you're saving.
Right. And I mean, like Patrick, he said he didn't have no issues. That's what I'm saying. Some people don't seem to have issues, and then some people, boy, they just. Now, let me say this too. Could it be where you're going to, which office you're going to? And I would imagine there could be some differences there. And I have heard that already. I have heard here where I live, for a lot of us to stay away from one certain office. I ain't going to call its name because I might get World War III stirred up. But to stay away from that office and go to another one. I have heard that. Which to me, that shouldn't be happening. You know,
right.
Absolutely.
You know, it should be on the same standard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's just the more and more I read into it, I can see where it may have started off good, but they've messed with it so many problems. They've messed with it so much over the last 20, 30 years. It's something you better watch what you're doing, you know. And I know, like, there's a lot of people say, hey, I ain't had no problems, and I'm glad you hadn't. You know, that's a good thing. And hopefully I won't have no problems, but I want to know everything about it where I don't have problems.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing, is research it, because they change these laws every time. You know, like this year, they done some changing up on Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
They changed up some tax stuff. If your tax man ain't up on that stuff like he should be, if he's doing taxes, he should be up on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I begin to believe a lot of them ain't up on it either, because I've got a little problem going on right now that I've got to take care of because somebody didn't do their job right.
Yeah.
Well, what I'll say to that, Mark, is I know my wife's previous job, she had to know new things every day. Like there was always something different in her industry that she was in. So if you're not up on it and you know, paying attention, you're messing with not her, but you would have been messing, like for tax people, you're messing with somebody else's life.
Yeah, it's
Right.
very serious. and I know what you're talking about, Mark. We've experienced that with accountants, and it seems just like a foreign language, when you're doing your taxes as a consumer and not being trained in accounting or taxes, just knowing the basics. It just seems very foreign to me, and I don't like that. But I've had things happen where they weren't consistent with their job, and that really shook me up, because how am I supposed to know? It when you find out the hard way that way, when you've turned in your information and you were doing the right thing, but somebody else wasn't, that's not a good feeling.
No, it's not. And I had put a lot of trust in this person. He'd been doing my taxes since 2013, and all of a sudden I had something pop up from 2019 this year, and I'm like, what in the world? And and found out that he made a goof up, and and he didn't even want to stand good for it. So,
oh God,
Oh my God.
so anyway, that's one. It's like that old saying: make sure all your I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed.
right?
Do your research. Do your research.
Yeah,
on
do your
everything.
research.
Well, why do you think, Mark? Why do you think when you pick up a tax document, you don't know what the heck you're doing? It's worded so we can't understand any of it.
Right.
And half the time, I don't know if the people that are doing the tax documents. When I go to Walmart and I see what is it, Jackson Hewitt or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and they've got a booth there, I'm not real trustworthy of those people doing my taxes. It's kind of scary.
For me, it's, you see around a certain time of the year where they're really hiring, and every year, which you understand, taxes are coming up, but it just makes me wonder about training. Is anything rushed for training to get them in that position? That's just where my brain goes. Here's a question for you. Mark, do you think an investment person would be better, is what Jean said. So I don't know, just something to consider. Or I don't think you really need to answer that.
Not sure on that one. I really don't. Not sure.
What's behind us? Bigfoot? Are they telling you Bigfoot's behind us? It's usually what I get in chats on Old Line Cryptids.
Also, I would feel more comfortable in whoever I chose. I know certain companies do advertise that they'll support if there was an issue, an error accidentally made, in the tax preparation. So I would just make sure and try to cover that base before I selected who I'm going with.
And one thing I'll tell everybody, I'm not a tax guy. I'm not even I don't like taxes, which I'm sure we all are, but never be afraid to do what I ask you guys to do all the time. And that's ask questions. Don't just sit there in the tax office and let them talk. If you have any questions, make sure you're asking them. Whatever pops into your head, they might look at you silly, but this is your life. This money is yours. And, you don't want to get cheated out of any money, and there are people that will do that. So make sure you're asking questions, and
don't be afraid to ask questions.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Absolutely.
Well, you're paying for it anyway.
Absolutely. But a lot of people will sit there and just be silent and like, okay, just and deal with it. I'm lucky. She does stuff for us now, but she's one that will ask just as many questions about that kind of stuff. I ask questions about what's going on in life. She's worried about taking care of us. So she's asking questions about tax stuff and banking stuff and all of this. Right. And, I guess I got lucky with that because some of the questions that she asks people were not questions that popped into my head. It's not something I would think about, but she is, she's good about that.
One thing too, that I've seen a lot, wheels. inheritance, man, you need to watch all that stuff like a rock, like a hawk watching a chicken, because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have seen so many families get in messes over wills or inheritance, and I mean, break up the family. They go to fuss and fighting because of misunderstandings. A lot of times lawyers will write these wills out, and they're hard to understand sometimes, because they're writing it all out in a legal basis.
Yep.
And none of us are legal. We don't.
Nope.
We don't study that. We don't do that. We didn't go to college to be a lawyer, and that's why we hire them. But a lot of that stuff's wrote up in a way that's hard for the common working man who's in a plant rebuilding machinery or this and that to understand, because that ain't our profession. So
you're right.
And make sure that if you're having a will, if you don't have a will and you want to get a will, first of all, find out how much it's going to cost you to have a will written up, and sit down with your significant other or whatever and talk about it, and talk about everything, every aspect of this, because you don't want to make these decisions in the office, because you don't want to make a split-second decision about the things that you're going to leave for somebody, or, whatever. You don't want that to be a last-second decision. So make sure that you have it all written out. Again, something she was really, good about when we did ours. I would have just probably went in and was like, yeah, you can leave my tennis shoes to my son. You can leave my couch to, that's how it would have been for me. But she's like, no, we got to worry about this, and
like
this.
Asking questions on what it really means, and who would that designated person, what would they actually be responsible for? Also verifying that the information that you gave them is actually what they wrote up, and names are correct, spellings are correct. Just, when you have that ability, I think it's best to take the time and run a fine-tooth comb through that. Make sure that you were certain about what you said or what you thought. You asked your questions about it, and they interpreted it the way that you meant, and they wrote things correctly, so it's presented correctly. Just doing your due diligence on that as much as possible, because I've been on the other end of that, and there were issues there that were an accident by the person who wrote the will, and it really can become a big thing. I know people have made comments. Obviously, it can become a big nasty thing, depending on the situation. But it's not just a quick fix normally. So
no.
Yeah, so just make sure you ask questions, people. Don't ever be afraid to ask questions, because that's how we learn, and the way we also can get things done the way we want them to get done. And so back to Mark's original, before we kind of went off the 401k Social Security. Now, I haven't studied Social Security as much for myself as my wife has. Okay, she came in one night but set the computer down in front of me and said, fill this info out. And, I'm like, what's this? She's like, Social Security. And I'm like, oh, wow, I guess I am getting that close to that age.
Well, it was just making sure that you have your information to access, your login on Social Security, because
Correct.
like people say, the time frames are so important, for one, and also making sure that they have your documentation correct on there. That they have your work history on there of what applies to go toward your Social Security. That all matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, people, the Social Security office isn't going to give two craps about you. Okay. If they can take your money, they're going to take your money. So, it's not like they're there for good. We've already seen how, or been told that Social Security is running out, but our senators and everything can give themselves pay raises, and they don't lose their Social Security. So make sure you're doing everything right, so you can get something. something to retire on.
Right.
If you haven't
And
prepared.
definitely go back and check your work history, because I know a couple of people that went and checked theirs and it was wrong. It was actually wrong. Like they worked at some little mom and pop shops for a little while, and that stuff didn't get filed right, and it will make a difference on what you're supposed to get when you retire. And I'll tell you another thing I don't agree with is how they do percentages on you. If you go out at 62, they're going to cut you 30% of it, which I know over time that is supposed to even up. I mean, there's a lot of debate about there's a time period that it breaks even. But yet you're still, if you take it at 62, you're stuck with that 30% decrease. Where if you go on to 67, of course, they all want you to go past that.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they love for you to do. And, but if you're getting close to retirement, please do your homework on it. Pay attention to everything, because I don't see people getting messes that I've seen some people get into. And that's why it drew my attention to it, was because I knew a couple of people that got in a heck of a mess. And next thing they were getting this amount one month, and then they get this letter, and the next month it's cut like in half. And I mean, it put them in a spiral. They didn't know what to do. And, the next thing they know, they find out they ain't got Medicare for a while, or they got to pay a higher premium, because they sold 2 acres of land. They didn't know they needed to report that, and, they reported it on income tax, because that's the only place they thought they had to. So be careful. And I'm glad a lot of people ain't had no issues. That makes me feel good. But then I've done hear the ones that have had issues, and I'm going like, woo, I can see where this become a nightmare very quickly.
Right.
And the 401k, what I mean by a trap on that, the government is going to get their money out of that one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
Also, you're playing with the stock market. You could get
yes, sir.
2.5 years old, and something could happen. You could lose every dollar in there. What you going to do?
Yep. So what I've learned to do is I don't play the stock market. My stock, or whatever he's called, my financial guy does, and I pay attention to it. That's one of the things ever since I was given 401ks at jobs, I would still look at what those companies that because you always get a certain setup. Like they'll give you like, well, here's this 401k, and you can see who you're spending money on or where your money is going. Pay attention to that. Don't just let it slide. If you want to do something with that 401k, pay attention to what they're investing it in. The kind of companies. Some of them don't ever make money. So they're just sitting there, and you're not making any money off the money you've put into the system. So you need to really pay attention to the money. I don't understand the stock market. I wish I did, but I think it's still meant to be that, they don't want everybody to understand how it operates. But pay attention to what you have in your 401k and the companies that they're investing. Like, everybody gets, like, BlackRock was one, and that's not a bad investment. Obviously, they're buying all the land and all the houses, so that's probably not a bad one. If you can morally accept that you have that, that's great. It's fine. If you morally can't, then there's other companies out there to make money. But just pay attention to all of it. That's the only, I can't give stock advice. I just pay attention to what I have in my retirement 401k. So, because that's a big deal.
I think another reason it really popped up is all your companies want to get away from having pensions. They want to get out of the pension market.
Yep.
That 401k is a good way for them to get you out of the pensions. A lot of companies have done away with pensions because that's pretty much guaranteed. A pension is. They can't really mess with that too much. There's a few companies that have, and I don't know what happened there, but it's kind of harder for them to mess with that. But, when that 401k started back in the 80s, when it really started gaining ground, and companies started switching over to it. And of course, they really try to push you into it. And a lot of them even force you to put in there. That's you get hired on. They're create a 401k for you, and they Not getting me wrong, that's a good thing. That's money that you'll have one day, and people will live off of it. But what I'm getting at, you're going to pay taxes on it one day.
Mm-hmm.
When you pull it out, you're going to pay taxes. So it don't sound as good as it is. They make it sound great. You're still going to pay Uncle Sam some money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're always.
So, and then, I know a Roth's, you can pay up front and get some of that. And there's different ways to move it around. But Uncle Sam's still going to get their money no matter what. So,
what was I going to say? Never mind. I forgot. That's my old age kicking in. It was going to be really intelligent, what I was going to say, but I forgot. So
I do that a lot. I do.
Yeah. With taxes. There we go. So, everybody looks forward to their tax return and getting money back. But what people fail to realize is that if you take the money there out of your paycheck and you take less money out of your for taxes, you actually make more money during the year. You're going to have to pay, but you're still making more money and you don't pay as much. This is what I was told. So if I'm not paying as high a taxes or having it taken out of my paycheck, I'm going to owe, but it will be less money than I would have been making with less taxes taken out of my paycheck or more. Never mind. That's where I was going with it. So yeah, we'll just won't say any more on that one. Anyway,
I was always told to break even if you could.
That's probably the best way to go. Seriously.
Try to break even, which is hard to figure that, but
yeah.
Try to break even where they don't owe you hardly nothing, or you don't hardly owe them nothing. That way you kept your money. But it's hard to figure that because things go up and down. You might get into an overtime situation where you work a bunch of overtime. That's going to change it. I know a lot of the younger guys, at work, they love getting back in big tax returns. They love it. A lot of them file single where they take out more taxes on them. And then the next year, them boys getting $10,000, $15,000 back, I usually end up paying. But if I do it, it's usually not a whole lot. I've kind of got it kind of figured out a little bit. And there's a few years they had to pay me back a little bit, but it's just something to learn about it. That's all I'm trying to tell people is to learn about it, research it.
Yep.
Just know what's going on with it. That way you don't get caught down the road like some people have and get in a mess with it. I hope everybody gets it and, trucks on down the road don't have no, problems. But then, so.
Just remember, the government will take whatever they can of yours. So pay attention.
Yeah. And I don't think it's going to get no better. I hate to sound negative. No, it's not going to get.
Yeah. Just by judging what we've seen so far, I agree with that.
Well, Mark, again, we're going to shut this down. This is the longest show we've had. We'll bring you back on in a few weeks after you get some, I know you got to work next Sunday. We'll do this again. We'll come up, you and I'll talk, get some more subjects up. Again, this is a chance for you to talk about stuff that you don't want to talk about on your show.
Yeah.
Well,
Rebecca,
you know what I mean? I don't, our show is about this stuff. Your show's homesteading, and we don't want you to get struck for anything there.
Well, like I told you before, I thought about starting my own channel separate and just bust it wide open, but I probably wouldn't last a month or two.
Well, I would be concerned that they'd see your face on your show and then see your face on your wife's show, and then you guys would be like, who knows? Who knows?
You never know.
Well, I want to say, first of all, if you haven't hit that thumbs up, please hit that thumbs up or hit some hearts or something. We appreciate it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. We're going to have Mark back again because I love listening to him talk. He's a wise fella. And he knows a lot of stuff about the farming industry, and I love getting other opinions on what's going on in this world. It's not just in the United States. It's literally happening everywhere. And, we're the pawns, and it's going to happen to us. Second, happy Father's Day, everybody. If we didn't hear us in the beginning, please have a great Father's Day. Hopefully you've had a great Father's Day. Hopefully you've gotten a phone call or a text, or your kids are coming over. And second of all, I know there's been a few comments. Our email is running along the bottom of the screen, and we are sort of looking at doing t-shirts. And this is the white version. It's just our emblem, nothing on the back. We were going to do a white t-shirt and a black t-shirt, simply because this emblem goes with no other color. Now, with that said, we're also looking for that fluorescent, was that green, yellow?
Call it yellow.
Okay. Like traffic guy, the guys that work on construction. If we can find somebody that will carry those shirts, we're going to have the emblem put on that shirt. We'll be selling them
25
for $25 a piece,
shipping.
and shipping.
But we'll have them at the McMinnville conference, so for sure we'll have them there. Somebody was asking in chat, and I don't know that they'll make it there, so I said 25 and shipping.
The shirts, I wanted to get them. We've had them now for 2 weeks. I've washed them. I wanted to see how the emblem, if it would fade. Obviously, everything fades after you wash it 20, 30 times, but it's held up great. The shirt fits great. It hardly even, if any, shrunk up at all. These are Gildan. So, like I said, we'll have them at McMinnville. And if we get enough people in the email that want them, we'll sell some prior. We'll go ahead and get a big order and do it that way. Unfortunately, everyone, these shirts aren't cheap anymore. When you buy them in quantity, it's the cheapest way to get them. And if you have emblems put on, it's the cheapest way to get it. Or, it's the cheapest way is to buy a large quantity. I know Mark and Becca have talked about either making more shirts or, and she probably could tell you, because you guys have a really nice cotton shirt. That's I like that. It's comfortable. And these are comfortable. I'm not ragging on our shirts. I'm just saying we wear their shirts all the time. So, anyway, that's pretty much it with the shirts. If you're interested, emails at the bottom of the screen. You won't get them right away because we'd have to have them printed, but we're just kind of getting, if anybody, getting orders together, if anybody's interested.
Yeah, just email us if you're interested and we can work out the details.
Yes. Okay. And other than that, everybody, thank you for being here. I know it's Father's Day. I we were going to not have a show, but I am not passing up having Mark on. Next week, might go back to another regular Oddcast podcast, or I'm going to try to find a guest. We don't know what it's going to be about, but we're going to keep doing this guest thing, but we're going to do the porch talks without a subject. So we're just going to jump in on porch talk. Like Mark and Becca are sitting directly across from us on the porch. They're not, but I'm sorry. But just like we're talking to them, that's what the porch talks series is going to be like. So we'll get back to that. We'll probably do that again in a couple more weeks with Mark. I'd like to get Spencer Jameson on. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, email us, ocpotr@yahoo.com. And if you're interested and you have a computer, we can do it. If I don't know who you are, I will have to vet you to make sure you're not Jimmy Crablegs. So we don't want any Jimmy Crablegs on our show. That's all I can say about that. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Mark, thank you again for being here and taking time out of your day. We're gonna make it down for one of your fires, Friday or Saturday night fires. One of these days, we are contemplating coming down for the I can't remember the conference you're going to be at, the one day.
Is it October?
The Cornwallis, yeah.
Yes, the Cornwallis. So we're just trying to look at what we're going to do, how long we're going to be there. That's that's the only odds right now. So
I look forward to that, and I've still got to talk to Scott and see
Okay.
if people can camp. I still hadn't had a chance to holler at him. I know him and his Sheila have been all over the world here in the last month or two. One week they're in Florida, then they're in Pennsylvania, then they're over
Oh
here.
wow.
I don't know how they do all that.
That's
But I got to nail him down and find out that about where I can come out and tell everybody. But I appreciate y'all having me on. I hope what I said made sense.
It did.
We're just living in a time that it's totally different than what we were used to 40, 50 years ago.
Yep.
And I see it just going downhill further and further, you know.
Well, you know, and this is the Southern goodbye. You know, we say that about everything. We want everything to be like it was when we were younger, when times seemed a bit easier. But I feel that they're throwing too much at once to confuse you, to, you know,
there you go.
And that's, you know, again, that's done for a reason. They want to make things complicated. Kids today, I'm not going to rag on all of them because we've actually just met, a person that she went to school. We went to their house last night, and they are some of the best people I've ever met as well. And this is the gentleman. He's got lots of land, and I'm in the works with something here that I might let you know, Mark. But their kids were intelligent. They were friendly. What's the word I'm looking for? Polite. They just come up and talk to you. They weren't shy. They hunt. The 4-year-old or 5-year-old's got his own 22. He knows how to shoot. You know, they work with him on gun safety. So it's kind of going back to the old how to raise a kid. The 16-year-old daughter's already shot 4 deer. So it's like, it was refreshing to find that kind of family. And I hope that more of those families come out. But what we're seeing now is mass confusion with how life's going to be. And if we can go back and live in a simpler time, it would be so much easier and less headache.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. 100%.
Anyway, everybody, thank you again for being here.
Yes.
Erica and I are going to go eat some food. And Mark, tell Becca we said hi and thank her for hopping on here. We appreciate that. And we'll see you Friday night on your show, I guess.
Yep. As far as I know, we'll be back Friday night. And I appreciate y'all letting me come in and run along.
No, you bet, buddy. You bet. We'll get you back. Thanks again, everybody. From the Oddcast podcast, Off the Record. We'll see you next time, next Sunday.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Good night, y'all.
There you go. Do it again. There you go.